My guest today on the podcast is talking about the science of business, or the business of science. It's a great episode where you get to look at marketing with a slightly different lens, that being a science-orientated lens. I really hope you enjoy my guest today. I'm super excited to have her on, and I love the way she has integrated science and business. So listen in. I know you're going to love this episode. Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Gonna dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Hey there, my gorgeous listener. Welcome to episode 75 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Thank you, as always, every week, for lending me your ears today. I know there are lots of choices out there, and I sincerely appreciate you making me one of them. If you're a first-time listener, then hey, thanks for landing here. Super, super, super welcome to you. I'm really happy that you're here. I am, of course, the host, Jen Donovan, and it's my job via this podcast, my social media, and just about everywhere else I hang out to make your business life simpler. Because I know that business can be lonely and hard and complicated. And look, it's rarely easy, but it should be simple, or at least simpler. So, of course, that is my commitment to you here on the Small Business Made Simple podcast. One of the ways that I can help make your life a little bit simpler is in my Facebook group, the Like-Minded Business Owners group. There's some awesome people in there, awesome business owners in there that are really ready, willing and able to answer any questions that you might have. And of course, I live in there too. So feel free to join up. And if you're already a member, feel free to, put those little questions in my group. I would love to answer your little questions that you have inside the group, because I can guarantee you, if you're thinking them, then maybe some other small business owner is also wondering the exact same question. If you're not a member of the Like-Minded Business Owners group, just head to Facebook, search Like-Minded Business Owners, or of course, you can come to the show notes and find the link there. The show notes live at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/75. As I said at the beginning, today I have a podcast guest, and look, she has the best laugh. Her laugh is infectious, but of course that's not why I have her here. We're here to talk science, business science, bit more serious than an infectious laugh. But my guest is Lauren Kress. She is the business scientist, and her business is the Changemakers Collective. The Changemakers Collective is a science-led growth consultancy business with, of course, Lauren at the helm. At the time of recording this, Lauren and I had spent lots of virtual time together. We'd actually been on a TV program together being interviewed not so long before we recorded this. I'd also been live on her LinkedIn, and now, of course, she's on my podcast. So we'd had lots of great conversations over the past few days prior to recording this. And I just loved her approach to marketing, and that's why I asked her to come on the podcast. Her approach to marketing is awesome and just a little bit unique, or at least the way she sees things is unique. It's interesting how marketing has these really core principles, but every marketer talks about them and puts their own spin on these actual core principles. And of course, Lauren's spin happens to be the fact that she is the business scientist. Her perspective creates curiosity, and curiosity is one of the best personal traits, I think, of any successful business owner. I could have talked all day to her, and I really do mean all day. So without keeping you waiting any longer, let's get Lauren on. Can't wait for you to listen up to her interview, hear all Lauren's wisdom. But I will just say there is a slight glitch at about the 30-minute mark. So I'm going to blame COVID-19 because, one of our Wi-Fi's dropped out, and it was just a break in what was a really great conversation. And of course, then we had to restart. So I hope you will forgive us, but it is a little bit glitching. But other than that, this is an awesome interview. Can't wait for you to hear from Lauren. Lauren, I am really excited to have you on the podcast today. Science and business, it's not something we necessarily think of putting together. And that's why I was super excited when you agreed to come on the podcast. But for those who don't know Lauren Kress, could you just tell us maybe a little bit about yourself?
Maybe. Yes, of course I can. So my name's Lauren Kress. Yeah, I call myself the business scientist, which does get a lot of attention. People seem to be like, oh, what does that mean? So we'll probably talk about that in a bit. But basically, I work with sort of small business owners, entrepreneurs, specifically people who want to really make an impact and make a difference in the world through their business and through their work. And I help them sort of, I guess, business owners that tend to be quite high level thinkers, they're visionaries, and, they have big ideas. So it's like, how do we create the strategic roadmap to really get there? And specifically looking at the growth related things. So their brand, their marketing, their sales, how does this all work so that they have a sustainable business and get where they want to go? So that's sort of in a nutshell what I do.
Oh my God, you've said so many brilliant trigger words in there. Impact, strategic, roadmaps, all these words that I absolutely love when it comes to growing your business and, for small business owners, of course, as well. But, you talk a lot and, we've had a TV interview together. We've had a LinkedIn live together. Now we're having a bit of a chat on my podcast, but I've been absolutely fascinated by, what you do, how you do it, and the fact that it's all based around science. So what does it actually mean when you're sort of talking about growing your business using science? What are we looking at there? What are the metrics?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, look, I'll firstly say that this isn't like my original concept. Like I didn't invent this idea, like I begged, borrowed and stole from others and kind of put it together to try to come up with, I guess, what I do. But my background is in science. I did a science degree and I studied neuroscience and I was really interested in human behavior, which is, very relevant to what we're doing in business. I don't know, Jen, we've talked about this before as well, like how important people are, your community, your staff, and how you leverage that. So if you look at a lot of consultants out there for businesses, often they'll have psychology backgrounds or science backgrounds or maybe even engineering backgrounds, because what we've learned in the I guess like in the scientific framework is how to learn, like how to take data, take information and turn it into insight. Turn it into something that we can use to make predictable and reliable decisions about what we need to do. And that's something as a business owner, I think, and I know for me, like it's so hard to work out which way to go. We have to make so many decisions like all the time to sort of govern our business. And often I see businesses get into this sort of rut where they can't see their way forward, or they can't see how they can, where they should invest or what they should do next, because they don't know how to take the data they have and translate that into meaning. And that's really, what I'm all about is like, how do we get insight so we can make informed, rational decisions? So one thing that I will say is that this isn't about sort of having a strategy straight off the bat that is going to get you 100% where you want to go. That's not how strategy works, but it's sometimes how we talk about strategy. What really we're trying to do is say, okay, like what's our best guess based on benchmarks, based on the data available to us from our competitors or from what we're seeing happen in the marketplace? And then how do we sort of make a plan, our best guess plan, our hypothesis of what to do? And then how do we go back and iterate that based on what we learn along the way? And by applying the scientific frameworks, so using sort of the steps in that framework, we're able to just make, I'm going to say the same thing again, more informed decisions.
Yeah, and predictable decisions, like you said before. And I guess, is it as can it be taken down to the simplistic view, like that sort of came to my mind, of looking at our Facebook and our Instagram insights, or using our Google Analytics to drive content to see what our audience is liking and produce more of that, or to see who our audience is that we're attracting and make decisions? Is it kind of almost at that micro level as well?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think the answer I'm going to give you is like yes and no, because that data is, I know it's like the most hated answer for a podcaster. Yes and no. But basically, it's sort of like that data is great, and like with a lot of people will be familiar with Facebook ads and things like that, and we can get really granular with the type of data that we get when we're running Facebook ads. But what I find the big gap is that there hasn't been a question, or there hasn't been sort of a formalization of what we're actually trying to work out. So people go, oh, my Instagram post that I just did got 200 likes, amazing. Like, we need to do more posts like this, right? And that's true. Like, intuitively, that makes sense. People are liking this. But what if it was that those 200 likes were from people who were like completely not your ideal client? What if those 200 likes were from bots? Or, like, we have to go a little bit, I guess, be a little bit more strategic in the setup of our experiment, So if we just have the data, and I mean, I'll use a laboratory kind of analogy, like, it's sort of like if we just started putting things under the microscope and going, okay, this is what we're seeing. It's like, yes, that's an observation, that's valuable. But like, what was the question we were trying to answer to begin with? Why are we putting this under the microscope? Why are we looking at it? So by having that kind of idea at the beginning and that setup at the beginning, going, what questions are we trying to answer? What is our best guess of what we're going to see? Now let's go and test and learn that. And then from there, let's analyze the results and see how this informs that question that we had. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It really is taking that thing to the next level. And like you say, with the Instagram and the 200 likes, like, what did they like about it? Did they like the picture? Did they like the caption? Did they like the question at the end? Did they, what actually did they like? Just because 200 people liked it, 5 people might have liked it for one reason, and 195 might have liked it for the other. So yeah, I guess that totally makes sense. And I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. I'm sure it will come back to me.
Well, can I just add as well, like with because I think, when we talk about these things, it can seem and I have the tendency to be quite abstract. So I'm like, I've got to make this concrete. I think if you think about, let's say, a problem a business has, like you have run a bunch of Google ads and you're getting traffic to your website and you're getting inquiries, but for some reason, which you haven't worked out, and this is sort of the question mark of what's going on, you're not getting clients or you're not getting customers. So you're like, okay, hang on, where is that breaking in the chain for my user journey? What's going on? Now, at this point, what can happen is marketers get blamed a lot. You're not getting us qualified leads. You're not getting us marketing qualified leads. And so it's going to sales and they're not ready to have a sales call, or they're not ready to purchase. And the whole marketing strategy needs to change. But that's making a huge assumption. And that could be going on. But what could also be going on is that the person rings through and then they get sent to a voicemail, or they get sent to a call waiting, and they're waiting on the phone for 30 minutes and they're not getting their questions answered, or the salesperson is rude to them, or there's all these other things that could be happening that's resulting in those inquiries not converting to sales. But by making assumptions, we can really be missing out on actually solving that problem.
Yeah, that example is a really great example. I love that, because it is something that we tend to look at one piece of the puzzle or one piece of the funnel, and perhaps not analyze the rest of them. But So take a startup, for instance, then. So, or in COVID-19 times, maybe someone who's pivoting. So they may have been in business for a while, but they're starting to pivot. So they're going into untested waters. They have an untested product, perhaps an untested audience. Like I know that you do some work with startups. So what advice would you give someone like that startup, or sort of a pivoter? Is pivoter a word? Sorry if it's not a word, but we'll call them pivoters.
If it's not a word, it should definitely be a word.
Yeah. Copyright me. Done.
No, look, it's a good question. I think that it's going to be different for people in different scenarios. So are you pivoting as a result of what you're seeing happen in the market? Because if the reason you're pivoting is for your internal circumstances, or it's not market led, or it's not customer led, then I would question, first of all, why you're pivoting to begin with. I think we really need to look at that the marketplace and what's happening in the marketplace. We can do that through all sorts of things like benchmarks, reports, white papers. There's lots of information out there. I mean, really, you can just Google, marketing trends and start to find things. So we've got so much information at our disposal. And we can also think about things like customer behavior, like if everyone's at home, what do they want? There was a report recently came out, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the source was, but it basically showed that like online learning went up by like 10%. So people are buying more online courses because they're at home. Maybe they're bored, maybe they're upskilling because they've lost their job. So that's an area, for instance, that if you were a consultant, you might go, you know what, actually, I'm going to do an online learning sort of offer because this is where I'm seeing that market trend go. So that's sort of one thing. But then in terms of actually going, okay, this is untested waters, I think that you want to, again, have that sort of best guess of what's resonating with people, what are people reading, what's popular, like get inside the mind of your customer. So I think sometimes it's really hard when we think about like a marketplace full of people. It can actually be easier for us to just think about one person, and kind of go, okay, if I was like, using our empathy, like if I was a person in this situation and I needed help with this and my business solves this problem, what would I care about? What would I want to see? What would I be reading? What videos would I be watching on YouTube? Where would I be going on like on my social media platforms? Would I be on Facebook? Would I be on LinkedIn? Would it be networking? Would I be on webinars? So if we think about that sort of, why are people looking for help? Where are they when they're looking for that help? When is this happening? So COVID-19 is a when situation. And after that is a when situation. Who are they with and what are they with? And we can start to sort of have a better idea of what we need to say to that customer to connect with them. And it can be as simple as starting to put some posts out on social media, which, Jen, I mean, I would defer to you. You're the expert when it comes to that.
Yeah, look, but I think you hit on something that I know when I started in business, like not so much my law, because, I didn't sort of do too much marketing there. It was sort of very much an organic sort of business. But certainly in my retail days, knowing who your ICA is, your ideal client, know who your who is, like it wasn't really something that resonated with me. It took me a little while to get the power of what that is. And in every conversation that I've had in the last few weeks, that's what we're talking about. And you brought it up there again, just, whether you're in startup, pivoting, or been in business for a long time, it's something that's really important to keep your eye on the ball. And even though COVID is a when and post-COVID is going to be a when, like our ideal client could have changed as well, or certainly their circumstances could have changed. Just like you said then, that maybe someone who wasn't online learning is all of a sudden online learning. So I just love that you've brought that up, because I just think it's a message we just need to keep thinking about and, keep spreading as marketers.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, it's sort of like, it sounds cliche to say back to basics, but it really is. I think it's like, what value are we providing and who needs that value? And if we can answer those two questions, we're already in much better stead, you know, and we're also probably ahead of a lot of other businesses, because a lot of people don't ask those questions, which is crazy, but that's what happens, you know.
Yeah, it is. And then, you know, you get the people who are in business, you know, perhaps next to you or in a similar industry. And that's when you start asking the questions of, you know, why are they more successful than me? Or, you know, how did they grow so quickly? And chances are it's some of the basic fundamentals of marketing that they've got right.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know, you know, doing my market research like I should do, like a good little girl. You talk a little bit about, you know, the 5 pillars around, you know, brand development and brand growth. Can you just have a bit of a chat to us about what those pillars are and how you think they're, you know, maybe which one is more important given where we sit in the world today?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, I'll just say that these brand pillars I kind of developed off the back of work that I really love by Professor Byron Sharp, who is a marketing scientist, kind of also where I got the idea for business scientist.
Yeah.
He's done an amazing 2-part series, 2 books called How Brands Grow. And he's looked at, you know, him and his team has basically looked at data from all over the world to understand what are those pillars for brand growth. And I kind of looked at what he had and I kind of just adapted it a little bit because I felt like there were a couple of things missing. But overall, it was a great framework. So the first one is, you know, we need to have a clear, you know, idea of our purpose and contribution. So our reason to exist. Why is our business here? What's our value proposition? You know, what's our promise to our customers, in other words? And what a lot of businesses will do with that is they'll come up with like maybe their vision statement and their mission statement, but they'll focus on the how. So Simon Sinek talks about this, and very famous TED talk that he did on the Golden Circle, where a lot of businesses can explain what they do and they can explain how they do it, but they can't really tell you why. And taking that extra step and going, actually, what is our end? What is the end result of where we're trying to be and where we're trying to get to? What's our destination? That kind of sets everything else up, because if we don't have that, you know, where we want to get to, it's very hard to have a roadmap to get there. It's sort of like going, just start driving in the car without a destination, right? So having your why is really, really important. Know why you exist and be able to articulate that. The second pillar is around having your distinct and salient brand assets. Unfortunately, this is kind of the only pillar a lot of brands focus on, which is like your logo, your brand identity, you know, what your imagery looks like, what colors you use, things that are going to create cues. So basically when people, you know, see something that you've created from your brand, they associate it with the things that your brand does. So, you know, you see the CommBank logo and you think bank, finance, family, home loan, you know, those kinds of things. That is really important, but it's only one of the pillars. So it's important that we create a brand identity, but for a lot of small business owners, that could be their face. Like it could just be the fact that they put their face up on LinkedIn. Like, one, humans are really, really great at face recognition. It's something that our brains just, you know, are really, really good at recognizing faces and remembering faces. A lot of people will say, I don't remember their name, but I remember their face. You know, that's quite common.
It's not a gift sometimes. Sometimes it's like the opposite to a gift. You're like, oh my God, I know you, but your name escapes my 45-year-old brain. I'm so sorry.
So that, you know, and this would be one thing that I would say to people who might be starting or, you know, maybe they're being hard on themselves about the fact that they haven't got all of these brand assets. Like, it really could just be as simple as having a few nice photos of yourself and starting to do video content like that. There are a bunch of cues in that are unique to you, your tone of voice, the way you talk, all those types of things. So, you know, having a logo and things like that, great for big businesses, but for small businesses, we actually it can be a bit easier for us in some ways because we've got ourselves, you know. So that's pillar 2. Then pillar 3 is media and market penetration. So that's about creating content that speaks to that customer we're talking about, speaks about their problem, and then getting it out where they are. So I see, a lot of businesses will do one of the two. They'll either create fantastic content and it goes nowhere, or because they're not getting it out on the right channels, or they'll push all this content out there, but the content's rubbish. And either one of those things you can't do. You have to have the two together. So that's why I put it in like one pillar, is create good content, create it often, and put it out where your audience are, where they're looking. The 4th pillar is all around your point of sale. So where are people purchasing? How are they finding you? Are you a brick and mortar shop where people walk past and they see your shop front and they see your wares and they go, this is amazing, I have to walk into this shop? Are you virtual? Are people Googling? For most businesses, it's going to be a combination of those two things. So how do people find you? How easy it is to find you? And then how do they make that purchase with you? So is it easy for them to purchase? Do you take card and cash and check? And, all of those types, like, going into a cafe that says, oh, we don't take card, that can basically end a relationship with a potential customer, because they're like, I only have card and I'm not going to come back here again because you don't take card, things like that. So make it easy for people to buy. A really good example of a brand that has done this extremely well, and not necessarily great that they've done this extremely well, but they have, is McDonald's. So McDonald's is like everywhere. You could be driving in the middle of nowhere and there's no food and there's nowhere to get water, but there's a McDonald's. They've made themselves available everywhere. Like I said, it's not necessarily a good thing, but that's an example of making it really easy to purchase from your business.
Yeah. And from a mum's point of view, and certainly my children are like 20, 17 and 16 now, but traveling with 3 children, like I had 3 under 4, McDonald's were clean toilets. That's why we stopped at McDonald's every time, because we knew that their toilets were going to be clean. Perhaps it wasn't the branding they were wanting, but, that is definitely the branding they got in my family as to why they got so many purchases from us, because when you were traveling in the middle of nowhere, you knew.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the other thing as well, is like the reason that your customer might buy from you might not be the reason that you even think that they are, so you might be going, oh, it's because I'll use gyms as an example. Like gyms might be like, oh, it's because we've got like state-of-the-art facilities and we've got amazing personal trainers on hand and we've got a great Instagram page and blah, blah, blah. And maybe for a percentage of those customers, it might just be like, well, it's just the closest gym. Or it was open on a Saturday, or it was open 24/7, and that's the reason, it doesn't really bother me whether it's this year's machine or machine from 2 years ago, but it's close by. So understanding why your customers are purchasing from you will give you insight into then what to advertise as well. Like this is, oh, people are actually doing it because of the location. Let's push that more. Let's get that message out there more. And then the final pillar, and this was the one that wasn't included in How Brands Grow, but I think it's a really important one for anyone who's not a big corporate, is like resource and funding. Because like for us as small business owners, it's really hard to like have a set budget for marketing and a set budget for brand growth. So we need to look at what resources do you have, what funds do you have, and how do we best leverage that? Almost like a little bit more of a growth hacking mindset of, okay, if we don't have money, but we've got a really passionate community, we can that's actually probably worth more anyway. So how do we leverage that? Maybe it's having a podcast show, or maybe it's doing like interviews with the people in your community versus spending thousands of dollars on Google ads. So I think dissecting that a little bit more and looking into what you have to leverage to grow your brand is like super important, especially as a small business owner.
Yeah. It's probably the 4th one that really made me think that there are so many people, and like this podcast isn't about COVID-19 clearly, but it is something we are living. And there are so many people that perhaps the pillar 4 is one of their important pillars at the moment, because there are a lot of people that were never online that all of a sudden have gone online, and they've gone online quickly. So it's sort of making that online presence and that online customer experience and checkout and everything that perhaps they've, you know, they're not things that they think of necessarily. All they wanted to do was get online because they knew they had to close their bricks and mortar.
Yeah, 100%. I would say the same. I think that pillar 4 is the one. Point of sale is one that has rapidly, been impacted, and to the point where some businesses can't even really have a point of sale at the moment. I mean, there's some businesses that just literally don't have the ability to. I mean, in Australia, we're pretty lucky. We're getting to the point where that's not really the case anymore. But looking further out, like, there's places where cafes and restaurants completely shut down, like they couldn't trade. Then again, having said that, perhaps they could do like deliveries and things like that. But if you can't even go into your workplace to make food, then that will kind of be hard. But I think that in Australia, we're coming to that point where we've had to be a bit sort of like messy with how we've, gotten online, if we're not online yet. And I think people will forgive that at the moment. I don't think customers are going to be too hard on businesses that were like, well, you didn't have a perfect, purchase page and things like that. But now that there's been that sort of like first like forced iteration, it's probably a good time to look at that and go, okay, actually, is this something that we want to continue? And if so, are there ways that we can start to optimize this now as our business kind of gets back on its feet?
Yeah, absolutely. It's you sort of build it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I definitely live by the saying of ready, fire, aim. No use waiting until the website's smick and perfect and that sort of thing, and just get it out there, test it, and work it out as you go along, and iron all the bumps out as you find the bumps. And so perhaps that is something post COVID that people will need to sort of go back and go, okay, it served a purpose and now it's got another purpose to serve. So we need to, put a little bit more time and energy into it, or it served its purpose. Let's take it down, whatever that might look like for an individual business, of course. Sorry.
That's okay. It's like, I don't know if I should say anything else. That was good. I liked what you said. I agree.
Oh dear, we are funny little socks, aren't we? All right. Okay, just a couple more questions before you go. I really appreciate your time today. I think this is a really great conversation. I love having conversations with other awesome marketers. I hope my listeners does too.
This is fun. I'm having fun.
Oh, so what do you see is the number one thing that perhaps small business owners, I don't want to say do wrong, but basically that is really what I'm trying to say. We live in such a crowded market. Everybody is just so busy. Some people are busy being busy, although, maybe they've learned to cook sourdough bread lately because they're not so busy being busy. But, what do you see that perhaps small business owners could do better?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a long list, and I don't mean that in an unkind way to small business owners, because I'm a small business owner and there's a long list for me too. I think that it is extremely difficult to run a business and keep everything optimized. So what I would say is, one thing is just make sure that, you're kind of doing the work that is most important. So sometimes what I see happen, and I think this has happened more lately because people might be feeling a bit unmotivated, I certainly did, is that you kind of retreat into the things that you're most comfortable doing, or that, especially if you're a small business of 1 or 2 people and you've got certain skill sets, you might be like, actually, we're really comfortable talking to customers, or we're really, I really love making stuff. Like, that's actually what I really want to do. I just want to go and make my product, and I don't really want to deal with the world, kind of thing. And I think it's important to kind of go back to, okay, like, what are the priorities for my business, from that getting my business on its feet, making sure it's sustainable, making sure that it's growing. That's going to be different for different people. But, kind of just be almost like, don't expect yourself to do everything perfectly, but just do the things that are most important. You know what I mean? Like, so if it's sort of like you're going, actually, we've got a really reliable customer base, our customers are really happy, although lately we've had a few more complaints, maybe that's where you need to focus your attention on and have a few conversations with those customers who've made complaints and look at what's happened there. Where if you're kind of like, we've got no pipeline, we've got no new customers, or, you know, we're seeing this massive drop in sales, then it might be like, okay, we really need to focus on our sales now. I don't really have time for these other things. One thing that I think a lot of business owners miss out on as an opportunity is in connecting with people online. So starting conversations with people, they go in so many different directions, and it's hard to predict from the outset what will happen. But for me, I've just found that has been, when things have been tricky, you know, and my business definitely took a hit during this time, was what helped get back on my feet and what helped me get clients and build my pipeline again was content marketing. So putting out my content on social, speaking in the media, and then connecting with people and just having a chat. So not making a big sales push, but just getting to know people. That has been amazing for me in terms of keeping my spirits up, but also keeping my business growing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, my audience, my gorgeous listener will be very familiar with the term, you know, H to H, human to human marketing. And that is definitely, you know, what has helped my business survive. And my podcast episode I did not so long ago was about, you know, your network being your net worth. And that's exactly what you're saying there. Like, you know, having those people in your world that you can just have conversations with without a sales conversation, but could very much turn into a sales conversation just by being another human and being giving. I
mean, I think a lot of people don't think about the fact that, like, I mean, I think you and I spoke about this yesterday on my LinkedIn Live, right? Is like your best like conversation might not be with your customer, it might be with someone who would be deemed a competitor, or you know, that could be a collaborator. Like, a lot of the time for me, it's been, oh, I know someone who really needs your help. It hasn't been I need your help, it's been I know someone who really needs your help. And that might not just be one sale, that might be 5. So, you know, I think we need to think beyond the making that sale. And I love the way you put that, human to human marketing. That's a great phrase.
Yes, and it's exactly what you're saying. It's just putting yourself out there, putting some content out there, but be willing to carry on the conversations as well. You know, text back to that person who commented on your Instagram post or your LinkedIn post and things like that. Just don't leave them hanging. That's just social media rude. Yes. Be human.
Agree. It's like that. I've had so many conversations with my clients about that, saying like on LinkedIn, they're like, oh, I got lots of engagement, but no one messaged me. And I'm like, yeah, but heaps of people commented. So go to each of those comments and write that person a message. Look at their profile, like go and do a bit of that market research on that person.
So this has been a great interview. Like I said, you know, I could talk marketing with another marketer all day long and bore my poor listener to death. But anyway, so just to sort of wrap it up, what's your biggest tip? What's the thing that maybe we haven't spoken about on the podcast today that you would really just love if they take one thing away from this podcast? What would it be?
This is going to be quite different from everything else we've talked about. I think the big thing is make sure that what you're doing is actually something you really love and that you're really passionate about. You know, if your business has been, you know, not fulfilling you as a person for a while, this is an opportunity to look at that and go, you know, we talked about pivoting before. Is this a time to pivot? Is this a time to look at, you know, what do I actually really want to do? If what you're doing is something that you really love, you know, use that. Like, people love hearing about how other people have started their businesses, why they love their businesses, and letting that passion come through. It's contagious. It gets customers excited. So I think, you know, it sort of goes back to being a human in that sense, but just stay connected with that vision of what you're trying to achieve. Because I think when we have that emotional connection with why we're here and what we're doing, it just really helps to do things on the hard days. You know, it really helps to kind of keep us moving forward and stay resilient.
100%. You know, if I wasn't passionate about marketing and social media, I would have given up a long time ago. Absolutely. And if you're listening to this podcast and you've just heard what Lauren has said, and you said, but I'm waiting for a sign, the sign, COVID-19 is your sign. That is definitely your sign to, you know, if it's time for a change, it's time for a change. And I'm not sure about you, Lauren, but I've had lots of conversations with people that start with, they're going to have to pry me out of this. Like they're really enjoying what they're doing, like whether that just be working from home or whether that be, you know, trying something a little bit different. But yeah, I think, you know, these few months are probably, looking back, hopefully going to be a blessing to some, even if they can't see it right now.
Yeah, I really hope so. I think that like we can't control what's happened, but we can control, you know, how we use it. And like, why use it for something bad if we can use it for something good? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, rolling over and kind of being defeated, it's like, yes, you can do that, and maybe it's even a logical response, but like, why, you know, why not hope, and why not fight for something that you really want? So I love that sentiment of, they're gonna have to really pry me away from that. That's great. I think that's like, that tells you that you're on the right path, you know.
Yeah.
And good on anyone who's doing that as well.
Yeah, and I think we all did wallow. I know I wallowed for at least 2 or 3 weeks. So what is it? We're in week 8, I think, of lockdown. And yeah, I wallowed probably till the end of the Victorian school holidays, and then, you know, I had to put my big girl undies on, and, you know, let's go out and, you know, do this. So so wallowing's okay as long as you don't wallow for too long in my world.
Oh, I did too. Like, I'm definitely not going to pretend that I didn't have some very dark days. Really dark, actually. My poor husband had to like put up with me going, what's the point of it all? And, you know, I make fun of it now, but at the time I was really struggling. And I think that's human. I think that's normal. And I think, you know, I'm not hard on myself about it, but I'm like, okay, yeah, big girl undies, I like that. Yeah, that's exactly what I did too.
Oh dear. All right. This has been great. I better finish up, otherwise I could talk forever. So if anyone would like to get in contact with you, because, you know, you are super awesome, what's the best place for them to make some contact or learn a little bit more about what you actually do?
Yeah, sure. So probably the best place is LinkedIn, just because you'll be able to see the different sort of, you know, I have a few different projects and things that I work on alongside my business. And also you can just connect with me and message me straight away. I'm really responsive on LinkedIn, and we can have a chat. I do have, you know, my website, so thechangemakerscollective.com.au. But LinkedIn is probably the best way to, if you want to have a chat with me, the best way to get in touch.
Beautiful. And I will have that link in the show notes for sure. All right, Lauren, thank you so much for giving up your time and having a chat. I've loved it. I'm sure that people have got some absolute gold out of what you've had to say. You have an amazing business and have an amazing marketing brain, and I can't wait to stay in contact and pick it a little bit more.
Jen, thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks. So how was that? I hope you enjoyed that interview. I told you her insights were awesome, and I love the way she's integrated her science education with her marketing business. And I really do hope that she's helped you view your world or your marketing just a little bit differently, because that's why I got her on the podcast. Of course, that is it for episode 75, though. I will be back next Thursday with another great episode to help you simplify your business in 2020. If you're enjoying this podcast, I would really love it if you would leave me a rating and review. Those things mean the world to me. And if you have 2 extra minutes in your day after listening to this, I would be super, super appreciative of you taking the time to do that for me. Of course, you can always share this episode with another superstar business owner who's doing that daily grind that would really appreciate you making their life a little bit simpler by offering them some advice that comes from this podcast. Massive love coming your way. okay if you can do that for me. I will, of course, be back next week for episode 76. But of course, in the meantime, I'd love to hang out with you on social and get social on social. Instagram, I'm at Small Business Made Simple. Otherwise, you'll find me on Facebook at Like-Minded Business Owners, or my favorite platform, LinkedIn, which of course is where you will also find Lauren Kress. But whatever you do, remember, my small business peeps, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
Tell it like you feel it, say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are. No point in dreaming small.